Hey there! Come listen to this true, scary story about one of Japan's most haunted subway stations, right in Tokyo. I'll be drawing pictures of the story we told. Now, I'm not an artist by any means. I actually haven't drawn in over 10 years. But I would like to start reconnecting with my old, teenage passion that I once dreamt about being an animator. So come along with me and follow my account to see my progress. And if you would like your story told and drawn by me, please drop it in the comments below or send it to my email. This story was told to me about my friend's father's experience in the early 1990s. He was a medical doctor, the kind of man who rarely talks about the supernatural. He spent much of his early life believing the world was made of the reality in front of you. But there was one place that marked a chain of ghostly attachments. That place was Shin Koiwa Station. Let's call him Yuto. He was in his early 20s when he moved to Katsushika Ward. He was a struggling university student, studying medicine, and had a part-time job as a barista, trying to make ends meet. Life had become a blur of crowded commutes and rushed lunches. His old apartment in Funabashi required 2 transfers every morning, and each trip felt like a punishment. So when a coworker mentioned a cheap, aging apartment only 2 stops from his university and job, he moved in without a second thought. His first morning there was cool and still. Early spring, when the air carried both moisture and the fading memory of winter. The tatami smelled fresh from the previous tenant's last cleaning, and birdsong echoed between narrow houses. Yuto remembered thinking, "This is it. Life gets easier from here." But he had no idea what was in store for him. He left his apartment around 7, walking through narrow side streets where laundry still hung untouched from the night before. The old shop signs creaked in the morning wind, and when he reached Shin Koiwa Station, he felt something, a heaviness in the air, like the entire place was holding its breath. The concrete overpass was stained a bluish black from years of exhaust. The overhead speakers crackled, their static rattling louder than the announcements. Still, he stepped forward. And then, a scream. A wave of people rushed toward him, faces twisted in panic. A woman covered her mouth, shaking. The announcement followed. A personal accident has occurred. Train service will be suspended for approximately 45 minutes. Uniformed staff ran toward the tracks. Police in gloves and boots followed with a stretcher. Yuto had never been so close to an accident like this. His legs felt unsteady. His grip on his backpack tightened. He turned around and left the station, taking the bus instead. That was his first morning at Shin Koiwa. Later that evening after work, he took the train home. The station felt different at night. Quieter, more hollow. Only 2 passengers remained in his train car as it approached Shin Koiwa. Himself and a middle-aged salaryman sitting by the window. The man had a wrinkled gray suit, damp hair, and a neatly clasped briefcase. He looked drained, like sleep had become a luxury he no longer afforded. When the train stopped, the man stood, bowed slightly as he passed by, and stepped out. Yuto followed, walking behind him in silence. Nothing about the encounter was strange, yet something stayed with him. He couldn't explain why. The next morning, Yuto stopped at the Lawson near his apartment to buy a coffee. Without realizing it, he bought 2 cans instead of 1. At the station, he spotted the same man standing near the yellow tactile line, staring, still and unmoving. Feeling awkward, he approached and held out 1 can and called out to him, "Excuse me, you look like you could use this." The man blinked, accepted the coffee with both hands, and slightly bowed his head. They didn't speak another word, but something simple had passed between them. From that morning on, it became a ritual. Every day, they stood together in silence, waiting for the train. And every night, they exited together, both going their separate ways after leaving the platform. But over time, Yuto began noticing odd things. The man's breath never fogged in the cold. His shoes left faint, damp marks, even on dry mornings. His shadow always seemed slightly behind him. The spot he stood on had a permanent dark stain, as if soaked by years of water, or something else. But routine had its way of numbing suspicion, and kindness had its way of quieting fear. Yuto continued bringing the coffee to share, and on some days, the man would bring Yuto candy. One Tuesday morning, the train was delayed. More people crowded the platform. Yuto stood between a young woman in a cream-colored coat to his right, and the uncle, his quiet companion, to his left. But when the clock ticked slower than usual and the air thickened with tension, the young woman began stepping forward. Not like a normal step, more like she was being pulled by invisible threads. Her body leaned, her hand trembled. She jerked oddly. Her companion next to her nudged her, but she didn't respond. The train announcement chimed overhead, and then her body lurched toward the edge. People screamed, and a group of men grabbed her, hauling her back just as the train thundered into the station. The platform shook violently. The woman's face was pale as chalk. Her lips barely formed words. "Someone pushed me." When the train stopped and doors opened, Yuto quickly ran inside, hands trembling. He scoured the crowd for the elderly man, but couldn't find him anywhere. And that night, the fearful look of the woman's eyes never left Yuto's mind. He recalled that before she lunged toward the tracks, her head had rigidly turned to face him, and terror filled her face. Under the station, the boarded-up convenience store had reopened. Inside, the air smelled of bleach and instant noodles. Yuto decided to stop inside and check out the store. The windows were cracked from old damage. The plaster patches looked uneven, hurriedly repaired. Yuto asked the clerk about it. The older clerk sighed, pointing to a framed photograph on the wall. A salaryman in a gray suit, smiling awkwardly. A year earlier, the man had jumped. The impact shattered my store windows. The clerk handed the bag of items to Yuto and sighed again. Really unfortunate. He always stopped in here to buy coffee and candy for his daughter. He was a good guy. I didn't think he would be having those kinds of problems. Yuto had goosebumps and felt paranoid leaving the small convenience store. He realized he had been sharing morning coffee with a ghost. Yuto tried to rationalize it in a way. Stress, imagination, coincidence. But every morning, the man still appeared. Calm, orderly, and wearing the same gray suit. Some mornings, his outline flickered for half a second, as if reality struggled to hold his shape. Other commuters never seemed to notice him. And Yuto began to wonder, was he the only one who could see the man, or did others simply choose not to? Now, remember, this took place in the 90s, so cell phones were not as digitally savvy as it is today. But what Yuto did have was an old vintage Polaroid camera that his uncle got him during a visit to the United States. These cameras are instant with the photos spitting out after taking a snapshot, but it took time for the photo to digitalize on the paper. He decided he was going to test the theory if ghosts were real. The next night after Yuto got off the last train, he watched the elder man walk off the train and into the station. He quietly took his Polaroid camera out and nimbly followed the suited man. As the subway doors closed, Yuto shakily held the camera up to his eye and snapped a photo of the man's back. His heart pounded as he readily planned an excuse that kept repeating in his mind. But as he held the camera in his hand and retrieved the blackened photo, he gazed around in search of the man in the suit. But the station was empty. He looked around the eerily quiet space and realized it was odd how nobody was around. Where had the man gone in such a short time? The subway screeched away and Yuto slowly walked away as well, staring intently at the photo he just took. The picture was still adjusting and he could see from the dim subway lamp above that the background was fading into view. Not paying attention, from his peripheral vision he saw someone in front of him. "Excuse me," he said out loud, then stepping to the side. His full attention was on the photo, and to his demise, Only a whip of white flash was in the center of his photo. It seemed like the camera had taken a faulty photo. He waved the photograph in hopes that the color would bleed more, but was confused at the empty picture he took. He glanced up and around himself, looking for the individual who he had just passed. No one was on sight. He scratched his head in confusion and continued walking towards the subway exit until he heard weeping. A quiet sniffle, feminine in tone. It didn't dawn on him why a woman would be crying at the empty station at night, but he paused and debated if he should check on the situation. A part of him wanted to mind his business and continue home, but another was worried that as the last train had already left, the next one wouldn't be arriving until morning. He shoved his photo into his pocket and let his camera dangle on his neck. Yuto turned in search of the source. From a pillar, he could see toes peeking out, as if the person hiding was crouching behind. Without thinking, Yuto walked toward the woman, and to his surprise, she was sitting on the ground with her arms holding her legs. She appeared to be in a white dress, and long black hair covered her face. He stared at her wide-eyed and felt goosebumps raise at the back of his neck. He realized the situation he was in as he instantly felt like a prey caught in a predator's trap. Her head tilted forward and her face tilted up, smiling at him. The creepy part was that her face was at the back of her head. Her grin spread from ear to ear, and her weeping moans turned into a cackle. Yuto's heart leapt out of his chest as he turned to run to the exit. He could hear multiple loud thumping noises on the concrete behind him. His only guess, with his imagination, would be that she was chasing him on all fours. As he ran down the exit stairs, he tripped and fell on the last few steps, pain shooting into his ankle. His old Polaroid camera broken into many pieces, with his backpack trailed off somewhere nearby. The cackling was next to his ear, and he shut his eyes tightly, waiting for his end. But a warm hand placed on his shoulder, and he opened his eyes. Within the dimly lit street lamp, he could see the silhouette of the older man, his hand on his shoulder, and a short smile upturned on his lips. He curtly nodded before walking away and stepping into the darkness. Yuto looked around himself. The ghostly woman had disappeared. He picked up his backpack and the pieces left over from his camera and stumbled home. Yuto states that after that night, he never took that direction home again and avoided Shin Koiwa station late at night. He also waited every morning for the elderly gentleman, but unfortunately, he never saw traces of him again. He felt like it was unlucky that he had come across a ghostly being so terrifying, but he thought perhaps it was karma for taking a photo of something he wasn't supposed to. Even though he never saw the older, gray-suited man or the creepy female yokai again, these ghostly experiences seemed to have opened a doorway for Yuto as he started to experience more supernatural events throughout his life. Today, Shin Koiwa has been renovated. New gates, safety barriers, mirrors on the pillars so commuters see themselves before stepping forward. The accidents have decreased, but not ended. Stations like Shin Koiwa sit on thresholds, places where grief repeats itself, where time fractures, and where spirits linger in loops of sorrow and routine. In Japanese belief, a ghost tied to its final moment can replay itself endlessly, unable to move on, yet unwilling to let others leave, as if loneliness demands company. Yuto's story seemed almost like the man had not been aware he was dead, and only in the time of need did he step in to help him. Whether or not the spirits of those who have died there are vengeful or lost, no one can say. But if you've gotten this far and would like to hear more stories about my friend's father, Yuto's experience, then stick around as I will be sharing more of his stories. Thanks for tuning in tonight, airy listeners.